let's say for example, tonight you approve a capital improvement expenditure, road resurfacing. At the appropriate time, staff will circle back with you and ask for your blessing to advertise the bids. Those bids will be competitive bids. We'll discuss those with you as a result of the bids being received, and then you can choose to act on the proposed project. So by supporting or choosing to budget for any of the capital improvement projects that I'm sharing with you this evening, doesn't mean that they're obligated or that I would just proceed without your blessing at a future date. Some of the goals that I at least hold for myself and my staff, and hopefully marry up with your expectations, would be to continue to provide quality services to our residents, provide funds for loan payments and essential projects or purchases within the capital improvement fund, strive to execute all township equipment replacement plans, talking about vehicles, equipment, mowers, those types of things, building facilities and things that require replacement and capital improvements at times. Complete the construction and transition to the new municipal building, and do so without a real estate tax increase. Moving forward, as you can see, and again, you'll have copies of the individual line item budgets by department and fund that you can review at your leisure between now and when you choose to act on the tentative budget. So I'm talking in the big picture, but by all means, stop me if you have any questions. You can see that our real estate taxes for the current and prior year are in good shape. We actually budgeted projected revenue of $560,000, and staff is projecting by the end of the year you'll have $565,000, and we would recommend that you consider adopting that same amount for 2020 because of the fact that, quite honestly, your real estate taxes aren't a significant portion of the general fund operating cost. Out of the township, the total assessed real estate value is $3.8 billion in property taxes values, and so your maximum collection based upon your current millage rate would be $591,000 and change, but obviously there's sometimes when taxes are in arrears.
Your current assessment, is that taxable property only?
Taxable only, yes sir.
Yeah. And do you know what our non-taxable property is?
I didn't commit that to memory. Terry might be able to provide that in a few minutes as she looks into her files, but I was looking at if you were receiving 100% collections based upon your current tax assessment, what would you realistically expect to get? And that's $591,000. I'm recommending to you a conservative estimate of $565,000, which marries up with the trends that we've seen over the last couple of years.
Okay, one of the things that
John, about $4.675 billion.
So $4 billion in tax exempt.
No, that's total.
Oh.
We have about 885 million
Okay.
tax exempt property in Hampden Township.
Okay, we have more than that, and so these values aren't right, because the last time I asked the commander of the Navy, he said that facility on their books is over $1 billion, just that one property. So that means that the county records, nobody cares, but I care, and there's a reason for it. The county records probably should be updated, but because there's no taxability on it, nobody seems to want to do it. But there's a possibility if they ever do tax reform that there'll be some kind of a formula, because there's a lot of urban areas in Pennsylvania where they have a lot of tax exempt properties. So I think there's going to be something. Anyhow, if they ever do it, I would like to have our value correct. So if we can correspond somehow between the depot and the county tax agency to update that figure, that'd be good.
Yeah, we did that a few years ago, and I think you initiated it. Yeah, at least we got was a far more realistic figure from the Navy than what had been carried on our books at least prior to that. And as you're absolutely right, the county did not go forward.
So we need to get the county to accept the figure that the Navy gives as far as what the value is. Okay, thank you.
Moving on to another revenue item in your general fund is the real estate transfer tax. Of course, that varies due to unknown number of properties and the value of properties that transfer on any given year. For example, this year, most recently, within the last couple of months, there was a $48 million warehouse that transferred ownership, which equated to a significant real estate tax transfer amount equivalent to about $240,000. So you can never really predict in any given year how many properties and what values of properties will exchange hands. But just for informational sake, in 2019, the estimated revenue from real estate transfer tax was $975,000. We anticipate at the end of this year, $1.1 million in real estate transfer, and would recommend that you hold the line at $975,000, which is your average trends that you see. And again, not overestimating revenue and obligating yourself to expenses that you can't afford.
Right, the school district got the other half of that 1%.
Correct.
So they got 240, we got 240.
Correct.
1/3.
Correct. But you're not going to see a $48 million warehouse sell every year.
Well, we sell this building.
Yeah. Another revenue line for your general fund, and this is, I'm focusing on revenues, as you know, in the general fund at this point in time, is the local services tax. That's the tax that's levied on individuals who work within Hampden Township, to which you are paid $47 of the $52 that's collected. The remaining amount goes to the school district. And the intent of that local services tax is to offset the costs associated with providing police, fire services, and also maintaining roads from individuals who travel through the township but may not be property owners, and so therefore they're contributing a fair share to some of the cost associated with providing them services, especially on the first responder side of the house. You budgeted $985,000 in 2019. That includes current and prior year collections. I anticipate that you'll be closer to $975,000 by the end of the year, so slightly off the mark there. However, recommending that you consider adopting an amount of $1,025,000 in 2020. Your average between 2017 and 2018 was $1,051,782 in collections from local services tax.
You think we're getting that for people who have home occupation?
Sue Penty from the Cumberland County Tax Bureau is pretty aggressive in pursuing those collections, so I would suspect, to the extent that it's a registered business and they are known through the tax rolls, yes.
The various things that the Cumberland County Tax Bureau does is reaches out to people like our staff for information about whether it's new residents having to do with the real estate tax, and they are very aggressive in going after, in any of these taxable areas, to make sure that the people who should be on the rolls are on the rolls, so that they're not basically putting a burden on somebody else.
Earned income tax is another revenue source for your general fund, and it's in fact one of the larger revenue sources for your general fund. And we budgeted in 2019 $5.5 million. That was current and prior year collections, because sometimes the disbursements are coming from a prior calendar year. Anticipate by the end of the year being closer to $5,640,000 in collections, so you met your revenue projections there, and would recommend in 2020 that you consider budgeting $5.6 million in total earned income collections. Cable TV tax. In 2019, you budgeted $625,000. I anticipate missing that mark slightly at $620,000 by the end of the year. As you can see, and we've heard this from different seminars that all of us have attended, where people are doing what's referred to cutting the cord, or no longer relying on cable TV services, which is where this revenue stream comes from, and they're using things like the younger generation that Dave and his family use, Hulu or whatever those things are that I can't figure out since I don't have that ability. But
I already pay for the neighbor's house.
As you can see, in 2017, your collections were a little more than 660,000, and we're seeing them trend down slightly. So I'm recommending in 2020, 620,000, and let's continue to monitor that line to see if the trend really does start to impact that revenue source as people continue to rely more on internet-based television rather than the cable TV service, which you have a franchise agreement for.
Yeah, but there's also a move on, at least with some people in the legislature, that would potentially decrease the amount of revenues we get from that. We have to be cognizant of that.
Correct. Next revenue source under your general fund is the per capita tax, and that's pretty flat. That per capita tax, as you know, is something that's levied on any individual that's 18 years of age or older who resides in the township. The base rate of the per capita is $10. If the resident pays it early, there's a 2% discount, if I recall correctly, on that. So it's not a major revenue source. You net approximately $135,000 after your expenses. We budgeted a total collections of $177,000. Anticipate rounding out the year in 2019 at $179,400, so you hit the mark there, but recommend that you hold the line at $177,000 in 2020. So you talk about your total tax revenue for the general fund. This is all of those taxes rolled together along with some other smaller lines of revenue, and I'm talking by small, $8,000 here and there, nothing significant. Total tax revenue as budgeted in 2019, we were expecting to receive $8,837,500 is what you budgeted for total general fund tax revenue. Based upon staff's review, trends, and recommendation, we believe you'll be closer to $9 million in collections, so very close to the mark in your anticipated revenue. And again, those fluctuations, for the most part, in any given year, are driven by real estate transfer tax, because you can see big swings of several $100,000 in collections that we couldn't have predict last year at this time when we were developing the budget. No one knew that a $48 million warehouse was going to sell. So that's why you see those fluctuations and why you're coming in slightly higher than what you were expecting in the way of your total tax revenue. Total general fund revenue. What this means, as you know, because I've worked with you for a number of years, and you were working with prior managers as well, so you're familiar with the budget, is the fact that total general fund revenue would include things like the recreation department offering programs, the EMS department billing patients for providing transports, minor collections in fines and penalties from the police department. And by minor, I'm talking your total police department revenue from the services that they provide and the fines that you receive are a little more than $100,000. They don't, so that's not a significant part of your revenue. The other source of revenue would be building permits and other permits, land development, and so on and so forth. So your budgeted total general fund revenue was $12,600,000 and change, and anticipate in this particular year being closer to $13.6 million in revenue. Again, by and large, the real estate transfer is what gives you that swing and shot in the arm. And then also permits that are issued for larger projects that no one could predict a year out, that may require staff's review and uniform construction code inspections and so on and so forth.
The hospital in this?
It would be a portion of it. They've not done a complete building permit submission, but they've certainly done building permit submissions to the extent that work is underway at the site. Yes, it would. Yes.
What,
Please speak into the microphone,
Me?
everybody.
Sorry, that was for not.
that was right.
But are you able to hear me? I just want to.
No, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay.
I asked whether, does that work?
Yes.
I asked whether the hospital was included, the two hospitals, there's two projects. going on.
Yes, sir.
They're both included in 2019, or are they partly 2020?
The Penn State Hospital will likely carry over into 2020,
Thank you.
yes, because of the way that they're phasing the project in construction phases. So your total general fund revenue, I'm predicting that you would budget $13,099,035, just to prove that I'm not just making up numbers and putting a bunch of zeros behind it. We actually get down to $5 within an $80 million budget. And that would be your recommended total general fund revenue for 2020. All right? Your general fund reserves, you do have some reserves at the end of each year. Those reserves do two things. One, they cover the They cover the operating, They cover the operating expense of the township during the first quarter of the year when tax revenues aren't coming in. So you have insurance costs, you have labor costs, you have utility costs, maintenance costs, work that staff is doing, so on and so forth. And so those reserves are intended to cover that part of the year, the beginning, before your tax revenues are received. And then those reserves at your choosing can also be used to fund the capital improvement budget. The capital improvement budget, which I'll get into in a few minutes, is funded by two ways, and Terry, chime in if I forget something or overstate something, but it's funded by the reserves from your general fund, and then it's also funded by grant dollars, and depending upon the type of project that you may approve, is sometimes funded by bond proceeds. For example, the municipal building, that you did a bond issuance in the public meeting earlier this year to help fund that project, since it was a larger project. But for example, your street resurfacing on any given year, those funds in the capital improvement budget would be from the reserves in the general fund. So the next slide shows recommended general fund transfers for capital improvement projects. You rounded out the year at 3.3 million in transfers from the general fund to tackle 2020 or 2019 capital improvement projects, building projects, road resurfacing projects, so on and so forth. Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we had budgeted an estimated 3.5 million.
No, we budgeted.
3.3, so spot on. And then suggesting in 2020 that you consider doing a transfer from the general fund to the capital improvement fund in the amount of $3,925,000. And I'll get into the bigger projects that your staff, your department heads, and myself are recommending that you tackle in 2020. You also have transfers to fund the retired benefits fund, as noted on that page. Your unemployment compensation, generally speaking, you're dealing with individuals who are seasonal employees, and then if they're laid off from, say, for example, the golf course, there's some possibility of unemployment compensation claims. Although the golf course funds its own unemployment compensation costs, as do the other enterprise funds, there are times when perhaps your general fund would need to fund that. But our unemployment comps claims are nominal, certainly not a significant portion of your budget. And for informational purposes, as you know, the fire company, the volunteer fire company, requests that you provide funding on an annual basis in the budget to assist them with their operating expenses. The amount here listed, a budgeted amount of $85,545. The fire company certainly will spend every penny of that, and then they're requesting a 4% increase next year in the amount of $88,970 to help them with their activities and expenses. For the benefit of the community, though, the Board of Commissioners certainly provides far more support financially to the fire company than that amount, because the township owns and maintains the buildings, pays for the utilities and the maintenance of those buildings, and then also purchases and provides the fire apparatus that the fire company needs in order to meet the needs of the residents. Segueing into the capital improvement fund, you see your 2020 revenue and reserves are expected to be $12,575,100 $75,109. Thank you. It has been, a long night so far. With expenses, if you would choose to approve and adopt the budget and the recommended capital improvement projects at $12,364,385, leaving you with some reserves to help you through the early part of 2021. As a reminder, your municipal building project, we did a borrowing, and some of that expense obviously is ongoing because the project's underway. That project's expected to be completed in June of next year, so we're carrying a portion of your bond funds over to next year to finish the completion of the project as you segue through 2020. As I mentioned earlier, your capital improvement is funded by grant income, as well as possibly loan proceeds if you choose to do that, and a transfer from the general fund. So for informational purposes, staff has applied for, not yet been awarded all of these grants, but we've applied for a grant amount in 2020 awarded to the tune of $2,515,750. So we do pursue grants. We are successful in getting grants. Dave, for the most part, leads those applications and works with Mike Garno and other staff to assist in getting those grants. The large portion of that $2,500,000 is an application for a multimodal grant that would allow you to ramp up and do additional street resurfacing at a cost not directly related to the capital improvement fund or the general fund. Also, the remaining work at the Veterans Recognition Committee Park, which is being funded by the Veterans Recognition Committee through fundraising efforts, we're suggesting that $104,900 be budgeted for next year. As development occurs in the township, developers, either residential or commercial, are required to pay what's referred to as developer contributions, recreation escrow funds, and those funds are used to maintain your park facilities or improve park facilities that have not been approved. We generally see, on average, about $150,000. It costs much more to maintain your park facilities. $150,000, just for informational sake, that would be, you're lucky if you actually got a nice play system out of $150,000. So you're never going to actually fully develop a park with just an annual amount of $150,000, but it does help add amenities for the public to enjoy. We still have the remaining loan proceeds from the municipal building. That full amount, $7.3 million and change, that won't be the amount that's in your 2020 budget because, again, we're incurring project costs right now. So about, we estimated, Terry, around $4 million next year to finish up the project.
4.3 million.
Thank you. And then to round out the capital improvement projects that are being suggested by staff and ultimately decided upon by you, a transfer of $3,925,000 to the capital improvement fund in 2020. Those projects would include, at staff's recommendation, the completion of the municipal building obviously is a necessity. Then we have the ongoing payment for the property that was purchased for the municipal building, which we're about halfway through that at this point in time. ADA improvements to coincide with your street resurfacing projects. The completion, as we know it, from the existing master plan for the Veterans Recognition Park. Again, those contributions coming from the BRC to assist with that. Also, on an annual basis, given the number of police officers and vehicles that you have, you generally need to budget for the replacement of 2 police cruisers every year. So we're recommending that you consider that. Those vehicles often receive a lot of wear and tear given the type of work that police officers have to do. This year, you had budgeted for, and we didn't quite get there, the possibility of doing a training pad for the volunteer fire company at Sporting Hills Station. Because of the fact that the design couldn't incorporate that, we've agreed to make improvements out at Good Hope Station so that your volunteers can train locally. And so we're programming some money for that project to be designed and completed. I spoke with you earlier about the fact that the township commissioners support the volunteer fire company by purchasing